Okay, so I want to jump on here real quick and make a video before I head out of town in the morning. This one focused on the Epstein case. So as you probably heard by now, the DOJ released a statement saying that they do not have evidence of any client list. Of course, a lot of people, especially on the right, are extremely upset by this. For years, we've been clamoring for the government to release the client list, and we thought that the Trump administration would come in and release it to us. But now we're being told that there is no list. For people who like to peddle in conspiracy theories, this has provided tons of fodder. But there is one key piece of information that I didn't know until I did further research, and information that the average person likely doesn't know. So I want to give you that information so you can come to an informed belief about this whole situation. And that information essentially boils down to this. The entire conspiracy rests on the backs of two witnesses who have proven themselves to be uncredible, and one person who didn't even allege being trafficked to a third person. Before I get into the details, I want to say that I completely understand why so many people are upset about this case and why there's still so much suspicion and frustration out there. For years, we've heard rumors about a client list, about powerful people getting away with terrible things, and it feels like we never get the full truth. And honestly, I get it. If you feel angry, betrayed, or just confused, you're not alone. I've had those same questions myself. But with that said, I tend to believe whatever evidence we have. And right now, the evidence that's available suggests that the government simply doesn't have the information that we thought they did. I don't think that people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who were screaming at the last administration to release the list, are now lying to us or are a part of the conspiracy themselves. I tend to believe them. But whether or not you believe in the conspiracy or them, I had one lingering question that I wanted to answer here. One that I think that most normal average people don't know. Where did the idea even come from that Epstein had a client list? I think with the information that I give you today, it'll make more sense how what the DOJ is telling us could actually be true. This is what many who are advancing the conspiracy won't tell you, either because they don't care or because it undermines their points and could cost them some viewers. But I think it's important for all of us to understand so we can come to a more informed opinion. And it starts with this. During the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, there were no claims that she was trafficking minors to anybody other than herself and Epstein. That's something that many of us average folks did not know. So why do so many people believe that Epstein was trafficking to someone other than himself? The claims stem from three key witnesses, all of whom have major credibility problems. So the first, and maybe the most prominent, was Virginia Giuffre. And if I'm mispronouncing her name, I apologize to her family. She tragically died by suicide a couple of months ago. And what I'm about to discuss regarding her testimony doesn't diminish the trauma she endured or the bravery she showed in coming forward. And I don't want to diminish the trauma or bravery of any of the women I'm about to discuss. I just want to give you a clear understanding of where these conspiracy theories come from. And to do that, we need to look at how their story evolved over time. So what's Virginia Giuffre's story? She made many allegations against high-profile figures for years, claiming that people like Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz sexually assaulted her with Jeffrey Epstein. But her stories changed multiple times over the years, so much so that she wasn't even brought as a witness in the Maxwell trial because the attorneys did not find her credible. So in 2009, Giuffre filed a lawsuit as Jane Doe against Epstein and accused Maxwell of recruiting her. Those were the only two names that she mentioned then. In 2014, she went public and named Prince Andrew in some court documents. And then in 2016, she expanded the list of accusers a lot. There were dozens of them. She claimed that she was trafficked to many high-profile people, including former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, U.S. Senator George Mitchell, and most importantly for this story, Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz. But in 2022, she withdrew her allegations against Dershowitz. After 7 years of maintaining those claims in public and in sworn statements, she said, sorry, she was wrong. And then she also gave multiple different stories about when she was recruited by Maxwell. One account says she was 15. She later changed it to 17. That matters for the courts. She's Australian. It was Australia court. That matters there, whether she was 15 or 17. The expanding list of perpetrators, major problem in her story, as is the retraction. She accepted multiple financial settlements that did not include any admission of guilt or wrongdoing, and she apparently signed a multi-million-dollar book deal. So her changing story, her admission of lying about Dershowitz, and her willingness to accept settlements without an admission of guilt all led the prosecution to find her so uncredible that they wouldn't even bring her in to testify. You may see it differently, but in the court of law, the prosecution decided she wasn't credible and would hurt their case against Maxwell more than help it. The second person is Sarah Ransome, who's perhaps an even clearer example of unreliable testimony. In 2016, she claimed in emails to the New York Post that Epstein had secretly recorded sex tapes involving Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and Richard Branson, all of them with minors. Now, her allegations were included in court documents and have been the basis for many claims of a broader blackmail operation being run by Epstein. The idea is that Epstein filmed these men with minors and used the tapes as blackmail. But in October 2016, the same year that she sent those emails, she formally retracted her claims. She said that she invented the story to draw attention to Epstein's behavior, to scare him into not harming her. In her mind, if Epstein thought she had evidence against him, he wouldn't hurt her. Now, to be fair to her and to my listeners, she did try to reassert her claims in January of last year, saying that she was forced to retract them due to threats. But she now has a pattern of making claims, retracting them when pressed, and then trying to reassert them. You can decide by yourself if she's credible, but I'll tell you that in a court of law, it would be extremely easy for the defense to paint her as an uncredible witness. The third person is Johanna Sjoberg. Now, her claims are much more limited, really only alleging inappropriate behavior from Prince Andrew. She says that Prince Andrew groped her breast during a photo shoot in 2001. Now, her testimony seems to be the most credible of all three. She's the only one whose story has not changed at all. But it's important to note that her allegations are far more subdued. Rather than, trafficking allegations, she's only alleging a single instance of inappropriate touching. Now, I want to make this clear before people come after me. Nothing I've said suggests that Epstein or Maxwell is innocent of their crimes. All three of these women have credibly stated that Epstein and Maxwell trafficked them for sex, and we know that Epstein and Maxwell were trafficking minors. The only point of contention is whether they were trafficked to third parties, and by that I mean someone other than Epstein or Maxwell. There are only 3 people who have ever claimed to be used by someone other than Epstein or Maxwell, and the entire conspiracy theory is built on their testimony. But what about the little black book? That black book we heard so much about. That black book was just a list of thousands of names, roughly 1,500 people. It came to light in 2015 and showed just how connected Epstein was with rich and famous people across the world. But there's no evidence that this was a client list. It seems to be a list of people that Epstein either knew or wanted to know. Many people in the book had no contact and never met Epstein. By that I mean there's no evidence that many of them had ever met him. And of course they claim to have never met him. So you can take them at their word, or you can also believe that they're lying. The huge focus on that book I don't think is necessarily wrong, but you should understand that nobody really knows what that book is, or how, or if Epstein was connected to the people in it. From what we do know, it seems clear this was not a client list. So look, I'm not telling you all this so that you don't believe in the conspiracy theory. I've given you my general thoughts on the theory, but I understand that there are still questions, and many people still believe there's a huge government conspiracy to conceal who Epstein was and who went to his island. I'm just making this video so that you know that the claims of third parties on that island are not very credible. The entire conspiracy theory is built on the allegations of 2 women who are not credible witnesses, and 1 person who didn't allege anything more than an inappropriate touching. So, in the end, my belief is that there is no client list because it's possible there were no clients. If new evidence comes out, I'll change my mind, obviously. But before you go believing conspiracy theories or believing the government, it's important to know the flimsy basis for the conspiracy and why the government might be telling the truth.